So hello and welcome to the Expat Pod. My name is James, your host, and today I'm joined by Natasha and her cat. um, we met via a podcasting guest kind of service, and they provided me your email, and I got in touch, and we're here talking. So great. If you'd like to please give an introduction on where you're from, and where you've lived, and what you do.
Well, thanks for having me on, James. It's a pleasure to be there. Glad we got connected by that service. It was really great. So, my name and my accent are going to steal me out within 30 seconds at best. I'm originally from France, but I lived in London in pre-Brexit UK for a year back in 2009. I can do math. And then I went back to France, and my longest expat experience has been in the US for the past almost 8 years, first in Texas and in Richmond, Virginia for the past 5 years.
Wonderful. And we'll get into the main podcast and understand how and why you went. So welcome to the podcast. Welcome to section 1 of the podcast, all about getting there. So Natasha, this is where I ask my guests a bit of the kind of reasons why they would wish to move, and then the how. So all the things they need to do before kind of getting on the plane or crossing the border in order to do that. So we'll start with your kind of stint in the UK. So pre-Brexit must have been much easier because there's a lot of free movement of labour and works for students as well. So what was the reason why you wanted to go to the UK?
So I was interested in expanding my time at university because my original background was in film and media studies. So I went to professional film school in France. I had my first master from La Sorbonne in film and media studies, but I kind of wanted to branch out, and there it was the emergence of what we now call, digital humanities. We really did intersection of technology and in arts and humanities, whether it's archaeology or, video games, really a wide range. And there were a couple of options, both at UCL and at King's College London. And King's College London, this is where I ended going. That was a master in digital culture and technology, which does not even exist anymore. It was one of the really pioneering programs in that. So that was really great. That's why I decided to go at that time and to move.
Wonderful. And were you looking at other places in the world that would offer a similar thing, like the US or other universities around Europe?
I was already fairly fluent in English. I was kind of happy to just cross the channel. And I was applying for something in Canada as well, which was more of like an English immersion intensive. And I was accepted in it. I was in Vancouver, if I remember. And when I told them, well, I need to change because I was accepted at King's College, they were like, oh, congratulations. We're refunding you. That's fine. And I was just like, that's excellent customer service. I'm bound to that.
Very Canadian of them, just saying, sorry, here's your money back. Me being a stereotypical Canadian. How long was that process? Was it just like a normal, you applied 6 months before the university started, or what was it like doing it from abroad?
That was fairly easy because, that was the application. I had to take the TOEFL test since I was not a native English speaker, which was so funny, and I'll get more into it, but let's just say that the minimum score to go into a UK university compared to a US one was vastly different. It's like you can go into the high score UK, you will be fine scoring for a US university. Let's say that.
I don't really see the benchmark is much higher in the UK than the US.
Yeah, it was like I had to have a 110 out of 120, and it was a 70 out of 120 when I went to the US.
I'm not going to make a comment like that because, I've already been vocal about my British and American English differences, and I'm not even someone who's very good at English, so I'm a maths and physics brain, so English was never my strong point. I had to kind of learn as an adult through lack of embarrassment. Even now, I still get so many things wrong. I'm asking my girlfriend for help, is this spelled right? Because I don't know. But wonderful. So the test you did then, was that a common test you could find? Was it online? Was it at test centres? How did you have to go and take the test?
The TOEFL was in person. I was able to take it in person in Paris because it has, for those who may not be familiar with the TOEFL, it's a 4-component exam. So you have one on written comprehension, one on writing, reading comprehension, writing skills, speaking skills, and listening skills. And I remember I did 113 out of 120, and it was in a cramped office in Paris, and in November the weather was garbage, and I was just like, I was feeling off sick. I was just like, can I just go home? And I was actually surprised of how well I scored, even though, I knew my English was decent, but it was like, okay, I'm done, I'm happy. That was like the biggest part because, going to the UK at that time, there was like no, as a French citizen, I didn't have any visa or anything, it was, and the university did really well in terms of housing options. So that's really something I can say that was really helpful. And then, I was lucky that to move there, I moved with a few things, and my parents came with me, just to cross for like a long weekend to help set me up and then, pick me back up at the end of the year. So I lived in, it was specific to international students. It was kind of funny because there were people from Australia, from Greece, from Canada in my hall. So it was kind of funny. We were like all the international stuffed into one building. That was kind of funny. So overall, and it was better organized overall than French university because French university is really you're front to the walls. You need to figure out everything people are expecting from you. And in all my years back then, we barely had a functioning website. So going to the UK where it's like, you have a university email. This is how we handle communication and everything. It's like, wow, I survived French university. You guys are doing so, make it so easy for me.
When you applied, though, was the cost of university quite high still then, or was it cheaper? Because it's before they changed the fees, right? Because I was the first year with the increased UK fees, which is £9,000 a year, but I think it was about £3,000.
That was less than that because back then I did qualify for like the same as British students, since it was still like the same. It was before the increase, and it was also like, oh, you're from Europe, you're from the EU, so. Same thing, like it was people were like from Canada or Australia were paying double the price. Me, it was still more expensive at the French university because what is not, to be honest, what isn't more expensive than French university. Yeah, that was also the good thing is that it was a 1-year master, so that made it more affordable than a standard 2-year because this one was what they consider like a tout master instead of a research master like the one I had done in France. So it was like a higher cost, but it was also just a single year. So it's like you wrapped everything within like more or less 9 months. So it made it easier in that regard.
Yeah, it's true. It means you're out of work for less time, so you can go back to making money again, I suppose. That's why I did mine in the UK as well, because it was a 12-month master's. So I actually started working before I finished because I'd finished my lessons and I could start working in the summer. I just writing my thesis in the evenings, which was quite hard, but it also made it easier for me to balance the books, I suppose, because being a student isn't free. So the rent goes up every year. Yeah. So then once you moved to the UK, then you went to the US. So what was that experience like? Was it also for studies originally, right?
So yeah, I went back to France after the UK, in which I stayed for 7 years. I was been back in France for about 7 years, and I was not planning to move to the US. Like it really happened on a whim, and because I went again, I had been struggling to find a job in France in the type of things I did, and I was actually on vacation visiting friends in Dallas in February 2016. And I was familiar with UT Dallas because I met a bunch of people from the arts and humanities, especially arts and technology department, during a video game conference in Oxford years before. And a friend of mine was just like, well, you could always try to apply for scholarship and get into the PhD program. Go talk to the advisor. I was just like, well, okay. I really went in like, okay, if you're really insisting, let me go talk to her and just, get it over and done with. And lovely lady, and the program was really great. I was not planning to go back to school. And they're like, well, we're basically, closing scholarships and program application within 2 days, like 2 days from now. So I was just like, okay, sweet. I cobbled all of my applications and my reference letter at the last minute while on vacation on a hot functioning laptop on a friend's kitchen table in like less than 2 days.
It must have made it quite easy then to decide, because you either you apply or you don't, because there's no time not to dwell on it, really. So did you have to then go call people back in France to send things over, like documents or anything for you to apply? What was the kind of list of things you needed to do?
Two big things were actually challenging in regard that French university do not really do transcript. That's a fun thing about France. French university do not really do transcript. Thankfully, UK universities do. So I was able to actually get, and since it was my IELTS, my latest master was from King's College London, I was able to just be like, okay, if I give you a transcript from King's College, are you fine? Yeah, we fine. Just send that over. So I was able to, to get it, to take care of it online. But I had to retake that TOEFL, that English test, because too much time had passed for it to be valid. So we had to figure out with my friend, there was one that was like a spot 1 hour away from where she lived, next to a refuge with lions and tigers. So we made it a day adventure with me first going to go take. I didn't study for that test like I did like many years before. I just showed up, I was just like, okay, whatever. And I scored 114 instead of 113 years later. So I'm just like, okay, I think that's fine. And for me, that was the only thing I had to do. I didn't really have to do anything else from France. While I was waiting, it was purely for the application. Then it was finishing my vacation, going back to France and wait a couple of months to see if I got a bite, which I did.
That's incredible. So you've been accepted then to the university. What was your next process? How long did you have before you had to move?
Not much. First of all, I was really grateful because I knew with my credentials and my experience that getting into the program was not going to be an issue. My main issue was, am I going to get the scholarship? Because without the full scholarship, there was no way I could afford it. Like, when you see US, I was just like, nope. Thankfully, I was accepted in the scholarship right before I got accepted into the program. So I was just like, okay, I'm fine. But that was, I think, late April or early May, and I had to start the beginning of August. So then it was the whole student visa application, which took a while. And I was living in Brittany, in the west of France at that time. I was not in Paris, so I had to prepare all my documents and get back to Paris, go to the embassy. And it's always super stressful because you're surrendering your passport and they have to send it back to you with your visa, and you're hoping you get it in time to board your freaking plane. I think I got my passport back like 5 days before taking my...
Couldn't you find?
Yes, it was like, if I could get it back, that would be lovely, because I had everything set up, and because I had to arrive. I started kind of mid-August, but I left on like July 27 or something like that, because even though I was staying with a friend while I was finding, where to live with a roommate and everything, it was still like, I need enough time to just get my bearings together, and, set up a bank account and a lot of other, basic stuff. So thankfully, I got my passport like 5-7 days before. I was like, okay, I can go.
But with doing a PhD, did you get funded from, was it a self-funded PhD, or did you have a backer in terms of the research you were doing? So I know in the UK, for instance, so that you can... companies would sponsor a PhD topic to do some research for them, and then they would pay you a very base salary, but a salary nonetheless.
So yeah, I was on full scholarship, even though the full scholarship was still, cutting it really close. And because I had a full scholarship, which was basically working as a teaching assistant for my department for my first 3 years while I was on site. And then I took a year off when I first moved after, because the first 3 years I was on site, and in these 3 years I worked my butt off because I had to take all my courses, do all my comprehensive exams, do my dissertation proposal and everything. So then I would only have the dissertation work left, and I was able to take a year off, which was helpful because there was a thing called the pandemic that happened in between. And then I had to take student loans once I was a permanent resident to fund my last year of PhD.
So when you left, was there anything you were apprehensive about before going to the US? Because it's quite far away. Did you have like a house and stuff to sort out in France? Did you have all your belongings to pack up? With it just being a very short period of time?
Well, I was living with my parents at that time because, like I said, I mean, finding a job had been kind of a struggle. I've been out of work for a bit, so I was living with my parents at that time. So that's they had enough space, thankfully, that they could not only keep my stuff but also keep my cat, who was raised with their cat because on a student visa and a teaching assistant stipend, there was no way I could pay for her. So she's back now. So she's one of the cats who may appear because I finally got her back. A couple years ago or 3 years ago now, so that was great. But it's that was mostly I didn't have too many things. I could kind of drop a lot of stuff. It was kind of a traveling light kind of deal, and the thing I really went there for the university because I love the university program and the people. Because let's be honest, going from France to Texas, it takes a lot for you to want to go to Texas.
Yeah, actually, I haven't been. I was meant to go during 2020 for a stag do because a friend of mine went to do his PhD in Texas as well, in Houston, not Dallas though. And we were meant to go to see all his old university friends before he got married in the UK. But sadly, the pandemic meant we weren't able to fly. Postponed my trip to Texas, but I'll probably go eventually because it's quite interesting to experience as a tourist. And we'll get into what it's like to live there in the next section. Is there anything else you had to do or needed to kind of think about before, I guess, making the move from either France to the UK or France to the US?
Not really from France to the UK, from France to the US. Ironically, I would say that the biggest stuff that happened was not so much when I originally left France, but for me, the biggest in terms of administrative was once I got married in 2019 was the whole immigration process that came after, from adjusting my status from student visa to permanent residency and all of that, all the way to becoming a citizen. I would say that was probably the biggest paperwork bureaucracy kind of deal compared to the original, like I was saying, the biggest thing when I moved originally for my PhD was, am I going to get my passport in time so I can take my plane? That was really the biggest thing. The whole ordeal of immigration later on, that was a war thing.
Well, I'm sure we'll get into that in the being there section of the podcast. So welcome back and welcome to section 2 of the podcast, all about being there. So Natasha, this is where I try and get my guests' impressions of the new countries they've lived in compared to the old one. So let's go for the UK first. So when you moved from Paris you were living in to the UK, to London, what was that like? Had you visited before when you were younger, or was it your first time visiting London in the UK?
I think it was my first time. I mean, technically before I moved, I went, to have it was kind of an interviewing process or the orientation day. I don't remember exactly. So I had gone once, but I had actually never been to the UK before, and so that was. I loved it. I mean, at least back then, I've not been in either London or Paris in a hot minute, but back then, I love London way more than I love Paris, which I know is blasphemy as a French person, but I love the vibe more, and so it was fun. It was kind of an adventure. I was really central London with my university, and I got also during the year to visit, a couple of other places. I know I visited a friend in Bournemouth, and I don't remember it was that time or following year, but I went to Brighton. So and then I went to Oxford. So it was kind of like starting from there and then kind of, exploring a little bit.
Still staying very south though. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there was only so much I could do on a weekend and, on a student budget.
You can get a train to Liverpool for £10 from Euston.
But where do you stay? That was kind of like also my deal.
You can do a nice day trip. It's not a big city, Liverpool, but it's a very good city. I recommend it. It's where I'm from. That's why I'm trying to sell it. Being the tourist board for Liverpool. So you first moved. So when you got your stuff over and your parents kind of went back home, what was that like? Did you have nice housemates? You mentioned it was all a bunch of international students, kind of, I guess, going through a very similar experience. Did you all arrive at the same time?
Very much so. I mean, it was kind of small at the same time, so I think that there were more, but like the bulk of us, we were really like 15 people, I would say. So it was kind of like a new building that added and opened to international students. So where we were like, okay, we have extra, we need to stuff them somewhere. So it was a little bit how it worked. it was like individual, like it was all individual mini studios. I had the smallest one of them all. That was kind of hilarious, but I was like, I have my own bathroom. I know I have a microwave. I'm a happy camper. I'm fine. That's that.
It's the first thing to think about. Do you have your own suite? Because as a student, shared bathrooms aren't fun.
Yeah, no, it was my own bathroom. Thankfully, so that was one of the perks of that building. We're just like, oh, we're happy to be stuff there because we don't have to share stuff.
Completely. So then, when you first arrived, did you go? How long was it before you started your studies? Did you have Freshers Week?
Not really. I mean, I heard about those, but having always been abroad, kind of as a graduate student, it's like you just get thrown back into the first week and deal with it. So I think I arrived like roughly like the first day, and I was starting the Monday or something like that. So I vaguely remember when everybody was kind of at landing, we all went out like to get to know each other, like on the Saturday evening or something like that, and then, on the Monday morning, it was kind of like, okay, we're all starting and we were all in different programs. We were all grad students, but we were all across all the schools possible at King's College.
Okay, yeah. So my postgrad was a sort of thing. It was postgrad halls, and I had a guy from Hungary, a girl from Greece, and a guy from China, and myself. And I was the only one doing engineering, and they were all doing different courses, which was really nice because you weren't just talking to engineers. Or your fellow people, but engineers are a certain type of person. So it's nice just not talking to the same type of person, because that's what makes life beautiful, right? You get to mix with everyone and get different perspectives. So, yeah, I think it's quite good that when universities think of that and go, well, actually, we're not going to put you all on the same course, because you'll know each other and then you'll go to their flats or apartment accommodations and you'll mingle that way. So it's always quite good.
Yeah, it was interesting because a couple of people that I met who was also, there was at least a couple of international students in my program were in London, but we didn't live in the same housing. So that was kind of fun because we would get together or anything, but at the same time, while I was, at my own, at the student hall where I live, everybody else was studying something else, or people in international politics, or people in engineering. Some people were in medical stuff, some were in computer science. So that's I think I was the only one kind of in the humanities department. So it was kind of fun like that to, as you were saying, being able to have different conversation with different people.
Completely. And then what was your experience of, is this your first time being away from home for so long, or did you study far away from your parents when you were in France?
Oh no! When I studied in France, I was all in the Paris area. So, did I have a 1 hour and a half commute? Yeah, public transportation. Yes, but I was still living in the same area at the time.
Wonderful. So, what was it like being? Okay, still 2 hours away by Eurostar, so not all that far, but. Did you notice it? Did you miss things from France when you were there? Was there things that you wish you could, I guess, have more of? Maybe a good bakery or menagerie, perhaps? Or
Not really. First of all, like, it's kind of like going in, I knew it was, a shorter, like, a 9-10 months kind of deal. So for me, I didn't miss much. I mean, it wasn't that hard to go back, visit family, for the holidays or something, because you're still fairly close. So for me, I didn't really miss anything from France at that time. It was more like the stage of it's really fun to be exploring something else. And it was also still Europe. So that was not, going, on the other end of the world or anything. So I didn't really miss anything during my time in the UK.
Wonderful. And well, how did you find the cultural differences? So obviously you think of the UK from France in a certain view. Did it live up to the expectation you had of it when you were kind of getting used to the day-to-day life of living in London?
It did. I think it somewhat even exceeded. I was mostly curious going in, but it's... again, one of the things, in terms of, I'm not necessarily a big city kind of person. I kind of like my smaller, kind of mid-sized city. I would say I'm kind of a mid-sized city, but I I kind of like the multicultural aspect of London more. I like it felt like a much nicer place. Again, at that time, that was a while ago, to just, walk around and explore than Paris. I was already kind of done with Paris at that time. So that's why I think I also really, really like London and all the opportunities. And also there was this aspect really of discovering, and I love being able to walk everywhere. Obviously to go from my hall to university, I took the bus, but it's my university on my second semester. I had in 3 different locations, and since it was close to the Strand, I literally was walking from one place to the other, but that meant on one day of the week, I would either arrive or leave one of the classes 30 minutes late because I needed time to walk there. And the professor were just like, yeah, that's fine. You alternate from one week to the other and everything is fine. And I love walking, so I absolutely love being able to walk to so many places.
Yeah, London I go quite often, and it's a nice place to walk. People get the tube everywhere, but I just quite like walking on the street because you see more. I used to love the Boris bikes or the Santander bikes, which they had, because I preferred to take those because you could see more of the city for sure. Although cycling in London's not the safest, because the driving isn't great and there's not many bike paths. It's getting better, I think, but definitely back in 2009 there was probably nothing. So, and then in terms of socializing, obviously you were there to study, so a lot of time you were spent studying, but did you find it easy throughout the year to make friends? And if so, how did you do that?
So I mostly met people that I met during my program, or were living in my student hall. But I also got to meet in person, like a couple of friends that I had made through an online Star Wars role-playing community I had joined not that long before moving to the UK, and 2 of them were living in London at the time. So we got to meet up a few times. So that was cool as well. And I got to meet with a couple of other online friends I had met through other communities. So it was like, hey, you're in London, or, I had that friend in Bournemouth. So it was kind of like also the other part of socializing. So it was kind of both. And even, even if you don't stay super close friends with these people, at least, it's still a socialization that is fine, and fun while it lasts. Not everything is meant to be. It's a lifetime commitment or whatever. It's rare seasons.
Yeah, exactly, completely. And friendships kind of have a shelf life. Does that make sense? Like, depends entirely on the circumstance. When you're a student, you've got a lot of spare time, where you've got a lot of time where you're, with people. As you get to adulthood, you don't have that freedom of time, or I could just go and spend 6 hours playing video games or something, As much as we'd love to do that, we can't, unless you're a video game designer or a tester or something, and that's a cool job. But, it's something we can really do with our friends so easily. I play volleyball for 7 hours a week. I can't do that now. Otherwise, I would just have nothing else to do. But the friends you make from those kind of experiences, be it sport, be it going out drinking on a Tuesday night, or going to online communities, it's a luxury you have when you're a student. You're time rich and money poor.
Time rich as a grad student, that depends.
I had more time during my grad than my bachelor's. So generally, I had more time. I don't know how, but
yeah, I don't know how we did either.
I got lucky on my course because my friends did the integrated masters, and mine was a 1-year masters. And they had more work and less time to do it, whereas I had more time and less work. I was like, this is great. I do 3 modules a semester, and then I have a 3rd semester for my thesis. So it was quite well paced.
Yeah, no, there was less time than that, even in at King's College and in France. In my first master, we did not have extra time to do our thesis on top of the classwork, the exam, and I had to do 120-page single-spaced the first year and 100-page of thesis single-spaced the second year. So, and all of that basically compressed in 9 months. So, yeah.
That's I don't envy you. So then going to the States, so from the UK or from France, sorry. What was that like? Did that live up to your expectation? Obviously, you went to see some friends when you first arrived there, even to visit. it's such a vast place, and every state's got its own personality. When you went to Texas, did it live up to the expectation you have of the stereotypical Texan you think about when you're, I guess, not there in Europe, perhaps?
I wasn't big on Texas in the first place. I mean, like, it was really like the program that really made me want to go. And up to this day, if this university has existed in Austin, I would have understood. But in Dallas, that was another story. I was lucky that I had one of my closest friends who was living in Dallas for a few years already, and I had visited once before. So that did help. And so she was able to introduce me to a bunch of people and everything. But I was already looking forward to get out of Texas, to be honest, and that was even, I mean, I moved there in 2016, so that's kind of all that there is to know in terms of politics as well. But I always joke when I said something that shocked people, even if it was completely normal, I was just like, well, I'm French. And then sometimes you saw that terrified look on people's face. And I called my I'm French being my get out jail free card, because people suddenly stopped talking and starting to imagine God's know what. Where I was like, okay, no, I'm done. But at the same time, the university, like my department and some of the professors were really, really great. We were also a very international university. That was one of the campuses that had most international students. 27%, I think we were, of international students. So when we arrived at the orientation, that was hilarious because it was International Orientation Day. So we were in one of the newer amphitheaters. And then they called, people to stand up by country. So they do country, and at some point, Europe, 5 people that year.
By country or by...
By country until Europe. When they called Europe and we were just 5 people, there was 2 Germans, 2 Greeks, and 1 French.
So you're starting a bad joke. So what was that like then? Did you... Because Germany, Greece and France are completely different countries and vastly different cultures. Did you still kind of, attract to each other in terms of values? Because there's still like a shared European thread of what you expect, or did you socialize with them at all, or were you...
I socialized with one of them briefly. She was in the neuroscience. She was a PhD student. She was from Greece. And we crossed paths a few times because I'm not exactly sure why it happened, but we crossed paths. The other 3 people, I wouldn't even be able to tell you their name, what they look like, or what they were studying.
But, and also, did you, the other international students then, did you feel a connection with them, or were you friends with a lot of locals as well, or other Americans from other states?
It was kind of a mixed bag of everybody. Like, I think the people I most naturally connected with were the other teaching students, because we were 4 people assigned in 2 sections of the same big freshman. It was generally an undergrad class, Introduction to the Arts. There was 2 sections of 100 students, mostly not from humanities. There was a lot of fun. The professor was great, but basically we were 4 teaching assistant during these first 2 years, and it kind of changed in the 3rd year. But in that group of 4 in the first year, there were 2 Americans, and one who was in his 60s, one who was late in his 30s. I was in my 30s too, and then the 4th one was lived in the US for a while, but was originally from Vietnam. So it was kind of a fun mix spot.
Great. And how did you kind of compare notes of when you moved to the States then, in terms of how you were all getting on? Because obviously it's quite daunting being so far from home and being in a culture which is completely different to what you're used to in France. So did you all kind of think or see something which was unusual and talk about it on, did you have that kind of shared experience throughout your time together?
A couple of international people, yes. And sometimes it was kind of funny also to see how people had expectation. Yeah, I feel like a lot of people had expectation we would have a bigger culture shock than we had, which I found it kind of interesting, of people being like, oh, so the culture shock and everything. And it's kind of like, well, yeah, there is some to a degree, but it's not as huge as many people expected. That is in my experience and other international students that I talked with. So that was kind of interesting. And again, I think that, at least from the university aspect, is that the amount of hand-holding in American grad schools coming from France was astonishing. It was great, but it also was just like that made it was almost like, okay, when is the other shoe gonna drop? kind of deal. And again, I was lucky that I had a close friend who lived there and who had been there. She was American. She had been there for a while, so that also helped with that. I think one of the biggest culture shock, which I knew going in there, but it's that you cannot walk anywhere. And I know it probably makes sense with what I was just saying about enjoying being able to walk in London. It's just the crappy public transportation and the inability to walk anywhere. I mean, I had to walk a lot on my campus, which was good, but it's also like, and also the whole, it's the US, so we're doing it better again. Mentality can kind of be hilarious at times. It's like or when people call buildings old in the States, that still cracks me up to this day. I'm just like, oh, sweet summer child.
Yeah, it is interesting. It's all relative, I suppose. It's old for them. I know old for us in terms of human life, yeah, which is fair. But yeah, it's interesting to think about the depth of history, which the continents do have differently. But I wondered, was the architecture in Texas was it mirrored from some part of Europe? Because it depends a lot of the US, especially universities, for instance, do have a lot of inspiration from other parts of the world in terms of what they choose to do. Did you notice that when you were there? Did it stand out at all?
Not really, and what is kind of funny is that university was had a lot of its original building from the 50s and olds, and or like you had some like brand new things when you had some architects trying to be inventive, where I was just like, why are you doing that? My dad is a construction engineer and worked in architecture and everything, so I also I'm cheating on that web or some stuff when I was just like, it's all supposed to be design, but where's the practical aspect? Like, you can do practical and 3D at the same time, so it was really like the lack of practicality sometimes. I was just like, why are we doing that? But I think for me, seeing not so much the universities, but it's when I moved to Virginia that I saw much more. I mean, Virginia was on the older side as well, but like there were much more like European inspiration on some of the older houses and all that I've seen in Virginia compared to Texas.
And it's an interesting point. So, one thing that kind of comes out when you think of America is the university life and kind of adult life is completely different. Especially if you're in a university town or sort of city where there's a lot of students on a campus, you can be quite sheltered. Did you experience that when you then left to go live in Virginia? You was a lot more exposed to the real America as opposed to this post-grad life in America.
No, it was already kind of the same in Dallas because I never lived on campus. I either lived with a roommate the first year or in my own apartment. So, and I only was on campus when I had actual classes or I was, being a teaching assistant. So I did also a lot of work in my own place or not. So it was kind of like the, real life Texas already. So that was kind of the same in Virginia because the thing is that even though the campus was in Dallas, it was downtown Dallas. I mean, Richardson technically, which is just off of Dallas. So it was not a university town at all. It was just smack into what Dallas is. So that's also an experience that I did not have. I think that's something that I had across all of my experiences, whether in France, in the UK, or in the US, was that I never had this kind of sheltered campus or, university town aspect, which I personally kind of prefer because, regardless of your age, when you go in, I think it's kind of good to still be in sufficient contact with, the rest of the world.
I think I completely echo that. When I was choosing my university, I did this similar thing of I didn't want to go to a campus university because one, I was always told that the suicide rates are really high, which is very depressing when you're 16, 17, trying to choose university. It's like, why are you telling me this? But also it's the lack of mixing, is that you only have students. So I studied, there was 4 universities in the same city. So there was lots of different people and playing sport, you could mingle. It was relatively close to my parents' house, so I could go to Washington and things like that, which is quite nice. That's the kind of a side benefit. But yeah, it is interesting.
It's important side benefit.
Yeah. But it's quite like in-state, out-state in the US when you get the different costs right. I think that's one thing that a lot of Americans don't go too far, because you get a much better discount if you stay in the same state. So, why wouldn't you kind of go close to home for that reason as well then?
Yeah, because compared to like, I know when I went to the UK at that time, it was like, it was the cost for UK/EU at that time, or anybody outside of that. And like in Texas, it was either you were in Texas or you were from outside of Texas, whether you were from like Oklahoma or China. Like, what? Like, it kind of makes no sense at me from a European perspective of being like, why would you have such, basically lumping any other state still in the same country with any other continent, and then just privilege, like, but I'm not in any decisional power whatsoever. I was just very confused.
Yeah, it's a bit confusing. So then another thing you kind of went through with your life in America was you got citizenship, or you got your residency.
Eventually.
Yeah. What was that process like? You kind of alluded to it in the first part of the podcast. It being quite a difficult process.
Yeah, like I said, the PhD was less complicated, and that's the PhD was simple, including like all the stuff. But what happened is that I got married after finishing my third year at university. And literally, my then fiance flew there to pick me up the day I turned in all my grades after I had my dissertation proposal approved like 2 weeks before. And then we drove across half of the country and got married like 3-4 days after arriving. I used to joke with him, being like, you're going to have to nudge me to say I do, because I'm tired. I love you, but I'm tired.
Yeah. Just drinking some Red Bull down the aisle,
A lot of Earl Grey tea. A lot of Earl Grey tea for a change. But that's, the immigration process. I was technically an easy case because I was filing for an adjustment of status from my student visa to from that to permanent residency. But then when you go into the permanent residency through marriage, which was my case, there are 2 levels. There's the first conditional one, and then 2 years later, you need to apply to the removal of condition, and a year later, you can also apply for citizenship, but you cannot have your citizenship approved until they accept the removal of conditions, which can take longer. So I basically initiated the process for my first green card permanent residency in the summer of 2019. And I admit that I got extremely lucky in how quickly things went. I still got my citizenship September last year, so 4 years later. And that's actually being extremely lucky.
Wow. That's, that's longer than a PhD.
That's technically, I did I was enrolled for 4 years of PhD, even though it took me a bit longer. But yeah, that's and the amount of paperwork that goes with it is just, it's more paperwork than to apply to a PhD.
That's well, you passed that, which is another test you've done in your life.
I am done.
And then, so I'm assuming you're now working in the US. How has that been in terms of working life from Europe to the US? Is there other big differences you've seen, or?
Yes. First of all, what is time off? I mean, that's in France we take time off all the time. I mean, in certain cases, because my dad was at his own business. He was a consultant in I mentioned construction engineering, and he had very long hours working for himself, but he was still able to take more time off. Like the mentality here of like, oh, you can take time off maybe once every 8 months, or no, it's like the corporate hamster wheel, or the mentality here is really like, wow, what the heck? Coming from France, where I can be the first to say in France, maybe we're pushing things the opposite way, but it's kind of like the middle ground when you can breathe and not work yourself to death all the time. So after my PhD, I did work a couple of years in corporate as a content manager in a domestic and an international company, and I ended leaving a job because it was really a toxic environment and not the right fit about a year ago. And then I decided to actually start my own business, which admittedly I found much easier to do that in the States than in France, because I had considered that at some point in France, and the bureaucratic headache had me go like, no, I'm still going to stick with normal employment. And so I've had a lot of some soul searching, and I started with more video consultancy, and I actually shifted recently because with my background being in film and media studies and my corporate experience, in content management, the video part made sense. And I had started on the side to do intuitive reading and tarot professionally. I've done tarot for over 23 years. I started doing that professionally last year. And I'm actually, as of last month, I am transitioning into a full-time, what I call intuitive guidance and tarot reading, because it's been much more fun for me, and this is where I don't have to be begging clients to work with me.
That's such an interesting shift to go into as well. That's so cool. Well done you for finding a passion and making it a career, which is really cool. Have you found that the US culture is more open to that, or I guess the US is so broad that you'll find everyone, and you can find a good market or a good niche for tarot and things?
Yeah, pretty much. I think it's really I think there's more openness to it now, because I think for this type of thing, there's been what we may call spiritual entrepreneurship. There's a lot of stigma around it, but there's a lot and more people open to it, and also working remotely opens you to the whole world. I mean, I had a lot of clients primarily in the US. I also had somebody from Scotland working with me, so this is. And I had somebody else in the UK, I do not remember where she was, but it's kind of like, that's the beauty of, working remotely, is that it really opens up things. And even in the US, I've had people who never had a tarot reading, but who were like, well, I like your energy, I like working with you, oh, this is really cool. And sometimes people, I just talk with them, meeting them, even before I made that complete shift when it was just a side thing, like, oh, you do tarot as well, where can I book a reading? And I'm like, okay, I'm following the energy and the money. And I'm loving this work. So
was that your tarot reading? Oh, there's money here.
But yeah, that's been really interesting, because I always thought that like the video side of my business would be the heavy lifter, while this part would just, be something I love doing. But and since I started it was funny, because you talk about, finding your niche and anything. I offered it, just to test the water in October last year, because I was like, spooky season, Halloween. People are giving themselves permission to explore that, because it's the spooky season. That's my excuse. And then I had a lot of people just really great feedback. And then I was like, okay. And I kept pulling the thread, having fun, really feeling like I made a better difference in people's lives. So it was kind of like, okay, we're doing that full time.
No, that's great. That's just incredible, and that's very good. Good point. So get the leverage when it's already acceptable to do something different and try something new, which you're offering. So yeah, it's very. I guess you got a PhD in it, so you should know.
Yeah, and it's also the fun thing is that it's not like because I think there's often this idea in pivot, and which can even apply, if you're living expat and you're like, maybe I want to go back to my home country, or maybe I want to explore another country, where it's kind of like, oh, this thing didn't pan out the way I was expecting, but it's always a life lesson. It's always, we've never wasted any time. So even now, even in that work, like all my background in storytelling and, even on mythology or so, it's still stuff, because reading symbols, I'm really good at that, and how to communicate with people. And even, as a former content strategist, I still understand how to build my business as well and find the right messaging to talk and interact with people. So it's like all of that are still building blocks. Even if when I did start a PhD, I was not planning that I would be a full-time tarot reader.
Has, going back to your kind of, your life in America then, so in terms of socially, did you have kind of extracurricular activities which you did to make friends? Did you do tarot in when you were at university, or was it something you kind of got into later on and you had a different hobby to kind of socialize with people?
So I would say use that as to socialize, but I've been doing tarot for 23 years, so I had been doing that in high school, so that's been a hot minute now. But one thing I was lucky in the States is that I did mention, when I was in London meeting a few people from that Star Wars online community, that I was still part on it. That's how I had met my really good friend who was in Dallas and who helped me really settle in. And I had a lot of friends in the US, not necessarily in Texas, but in other parts. So I got to visit them, and also even just sometimes chatting, video chatting when you're not like 10 hours of difference or God knows what. It's easier when the worst is, 3 hours of difference. So, and funnily enough, a few of them are also into tarot, and sometimes even to this day, we still meet up a few times a year to just do tarot nights. So, yeah.
Cool. And did that help you then when you first moved in terms of getting over the distance, knowing that you had this community to lean on if you needed someone to talk to or some help or some advice in terms of, which laundry detergent should I buy, or is this good thing to eat? What's a pop tart? That kind of stuff. Did you kind of lean on them for kind of day-to-day support?
I did lean on my one friend in Texas, and then who was in Dallas. I mean, I stayed with her also. She was very generous in how I stayed with her, like just the time that I needed, to find a roommate and everything. And then there's always like that. There was another group of people I kind of felt were friends, and then there was a fallout and anything due to different values. I will leave it at that. But it was really helpful because that was because as much as I was lucky that I had a lot of my friends there, and then I started dating my now husband toward the end of my first year in Dallas, so that it was also a lot of support even when we were long distance for a couple of years. And I was also very lucky that the person who was really an amazing, maybe not on the day-to-day, but was still really helpful, was my committee chair. She was absolutely amazing. I was extremely lucky to work with her during the whole time. She really made a difference. And overall, I would say my department, like the people in my department, were really, really great. And our graduate advisor, which was the first one I had met, like when people were saying, go talk to the grad advisor, she was also an expat because she was from Sweden, and she had come to UTD. She was older, but she had come to UTD where I did my PhD to do her own PhD. So it was also that there was kind of like this understanding and this, hey, I went through that, XYZ. So it was like, I would say mostly from people I knew, even though I had met other people while in Dallas. But I would say during my time in Dallas was mostly people I had known from that online community or people in my department who were really helpful.
Great. And then, so obviously you met your now husband. Was that at a social event? How did you meet?
That Star Wars online community. We had known of each other's existence for like 8 or 9 years, but we had never actually talked to each other until I moved to the States. And we had a lot of mutual friends in common, including some of mutual friends that I had known for 10 years, who had known him for like close to 20 years. So it's funny when they tell you, oh, the internet, it doesn't last. That community started like 20 or close to 25 years ago now. So that's, so it depends. It's like what you put in it, It's like what do you invest in it? And so that's how I met him.
So was he also living in Dallas at the same time?
No, he was in Virginia, in Richmond, where we live now. He was raised in the area, lived there the whole time. So I got to visit him in May 2017 for the first time. So, and that's kind of since then we're together.
And how did you find the long distance thing? Obviously, you've been long distance friends for a while. Did that was it more difficult? How did you deal with long distance relationships? And a lot of the listeners might have relationships as well who are different time zones, different countries, perhaps. And it's quite difficult, speaking from my experience.
Yeah, it's the thing I think is that you have to have something to share. If you have nothing to talk about, then you're not going to go anywhere because it's... So we did start as friends. I mean, I never thought there would be anything beyond that at that time, which is kind of funny looking now. But it's like, you just start as friends, you talk about a lot of stuff you have in common and everything. And we were able to see each other like a few times a year, but... I think having, stuff in common and things to talk about and also having your own life. I mean, he has his job, he had his friends, I was doing my PhD and everything. So it's like, you also learn to give each other space in that because, you're not living in the same place. So you have to also, be cool with that and really having a lot to share and talk, including when you realize that you're going to be serious, have all the big talks, whatever that exactly may be for you. But it's like, okay, we're having it. The only thing we can do right now is talk. So we can as well,
And then your family back home, what was that like in terms of how often did you go out to see them? Did your parents come out to visit you or friends from France? What was your kind of cadence with communicating with them?
So basically, I left about 0 friends in France. So like I was saying, most of my friends were in the US. So that was that. But for my parents, I'm an only child. For my parents, I was kind of rougher because it's like, I know, because it's been hard to be able to visit. I mean, if I visit, I was always the one visiting because it was easier. But it's like when I was able to go there, before the pandemic, once during the pandemic. But like the pandemic really did not help as well, because that was a rollover thing. I still remember when I went in 2021, I was almost turned down. Like it was 7 a.m. in Paris. I was almost turned away and sent back because somebody couldn't read that, kept misreading my COVID test, and they're like, oh, you had the COVID test done at X time, so it cannot be valid. You were like 3 hours late. We don't know if you got COVID or whatever. And I'm like, dude, it's 7 a.m. I couldn't have it done later than that because of the freaking plane. Like, chill. I was like, that was a mess.
I know it's near because if a flight gets delayed or something, then you could.
Which was my case as well, that the flight got delayed. Like, ugh. Do not recommend Paris Charles de Gaulle Airport to anybody. By the way, this is still the first airport I've ever been to. I am sorry for anybody for whom it's the first taste of France. On behalf of all of France, I apologize. But yeah, this is a headache even when you speak French.
It's funny because I've flown to Lyon, but most of the times I go to France, either by ferry or by train, because the Eurostar is so. I love the Eurostar. It's such a great way of getting around. And it's similar price to a flight.
Right. And usually people at the train stations are more nice and competent, so that's also a plus.
Yes, and you can take more bags with you as well. That's what I like. They may not have many days off for work, but they do have a lot of like national holidays. How's that been like? What's the culture been like for 4th of July, for Thanksgiving, for Labor Day? Have you really thrown yourself into it now you've got your kind of husband's family and things, or is it still quite new to you?
I still miss many of the days. I mean, now I have Labor Day, Memorial Day, and the 4th of July and Thanksgiving down in my brain. But any other, like the isolated Mondays off, I'm always usually, my husband is going to tell me, yeah, I have next Monday off or something. I'm like, what? It's been a few years and I still do not remember that. Also, Memorial Day is kind of nice because we did get married the Sunday of Memorial Day weekend. So it's also like an excuse for us to, anniversary celebration or whatever. And even though the history of Thanksgiving is very problematic in terms of history, I do appreciate kind of starting the holiday season earlier than in Europe when we technically, it's more like in first half, mid-December. So I do appreciate, despite the problem with the meaning of Thanksgiving and its history, that to get started late November, all the way to early January. So it's kind of nice to have that excuse. And yeah, I totally became American in the way that I do set up my Christmas decoration the weekend after Thanksgiving now in late November, and I am not ashamed to say that.
It lasts longer, right? It's more sustainable.
Exactly, and I'm a December baby, so I like that.
Yeah, I'm August, so I'm the opposite end, which is I like being on holidays. Wonderful. Is there anything else you wish to share from your experience abroad in terms of the day-to-day life, the socializing? We've talked quite a lot, which is great.
There's one thing that comes to mind which may seem weird and that I was not expecting in a good way, is that I'm a vegetarian. And growing up being a vegetarian in France was pain in the rear, to put it very mildly, because it was like, oh, so you eat fish, or you eat chicken, or you're a vegan, and like, having spent over 30 years of my life in France trying to have to explain over and over again what being vegetarian was, it's weirdly way easier in the US to be vegetarian, and I absolutely love that, including like sometimes because I don't care what is in anybody else's plate, like I had people like, oh, does it bother you? I'm like, I don't care. It's not my plate. Enjoy. And I had ironically, my friends at some point wanting to go to a ribs restaurant. And they were like, oh, we don't know. I'm like, we'll probably have a salad. Irony, that was one of the best salads I ever had. Everybody was dripping, eating, in sauce and eating meat. And I was enjoying one of the best salads ever. And I was just like, I'm here for that.
But the answer doesn't eat a lot of meat either, and I went to a wings place, and yeah, I don't eat wings, and they had cauliflower wings, and they're incredible. Like one of the best things ever, and it's like meat heaven. And I know my cauliflower, like this tastes so good. Which is, I think that's one of the best things since the pandemic as well. Veganism has exploded more in the UK, and there's a lot more options now available. And I think some parts of the world are catching up, perhaps. But yeah, you think that 10 years ago it wasn't that much of it was very much an outsider's thing to do. But now I think there's a lot more options for food, which it's wonderful. And I think food in the US gets quite a bad rap, I think, especially in Europe. English food gets a bad rap, so.
They put sugar in everything, which I hate, but that also gives me an excuse if I want to bake something, or eat sweets or baked goods, I'm going to make them myself at home. But overall, you can make things work. It's like once you know what to look for, like that things are going to be way too sugary, well, there's a way to find, and not necessarily super expensive ones to find, or do more things from scratch, or, just eat more simply. But going out, it's way easier. And that was even when I visited for the very first time in 2012 to find vegetarian options when you go out, which has been really, really nice. So that's something I do appreciate, and that I was not expecting coming from Europe. Like, sure, there are issues with how people eat here in the US, but there's also good options and good surprises that do happen, including if you're a vegetarian or I guess or even a vegan.
Much more, I guess, much better hosts for accommodating is the word I was looking for. They're more accommodating for different dietary requirements, so to speak. I'm sure gluten-free would be another one. I know, like going to Germany and trying to have no gluten is very difficult, or sans gluten in France. It's like,
good luck.
The boulangerie is pure gluten. Is there anything else you wish to kind of share about your time, or can we go into section 3? So hello, welcome back to the podcast. We're on section 3, all about a review of your time. So Natasha, this is kind of where I asked my guests initially, kind of, if they could go back to before they kind of moved abroad, what might they tell themselves, or might they change just to help the experience that they've had be better or different or richer?
So both times in my case, I moved for my studies. So it's also something that is, kind of like, giving a certain color, so to speak, to my experience. But I would say if you're going to engage in study, in both cases for me, I did a lot of research on the program themselves, so I really knew what it was. Even when I went on a whim, so to speak, to UTD, I was very familiar with the department already. So that was something where I had, a leg up, because I was very familiar with what they did in the program, because I had collaborated with several students and professors there. So I would say if you're going to go and be like, I'm going to invest my time and my energy into a program, and that's why you're moving abroad, make sure that you're not just picking any program, but really make sure it's something you're interested in. Will there be classes you hate? Yes, that's part of the deal. No matter if that's you're like 5 minutes from home or on the other side of the world, there will be classes you hate. But beside those exceptions, really making sure you pick something that not only the program interests you, making sure the university share your values. That's also extremely important, because for me, UT Dallas was not only like a big international, had a big number of international students that were really inclusive. We were the only South campus in the States that was in the top 25 of LGBTQ plus friendly campuses in the US. We were the only one in the South to rank sufficiently well enough, and
that's great for your university, but really sad for the rest of the southern states, I suppose. But
yeah, So this was where that was one of the values that was important for me. So it's like it's the program, but also the values, I would say. And to a degree, I think this also does apply if you're moving, like let's say for a job, which was again not my experience, but I would say make sure that at least on paper, it looks like it's ticking enough boxes. Maybe you don't care about many of those boxes, but I would say if on the outside, at least, because once you're inside, you can have some whiplash and stuff. I am not denying that. I've been there. Even in my career, but try to ask as many questions to make sure that the values of the company, also aligns with yours, and to get a good idea, because there will always be, even if you have support, and also I was lucky to have support, like either it was in the UK with not much support, but I was close enough to home that if, an emergency had happened or anything, my family could support me. Or I had, at least one really good friend in Dallas who would be able, and people elsewhere in the country, even if it's a big one. If that can give you peace of mind, even if I would say it's also totally normal to feel homesick or feel that, kind of disconnected. So it's like not so much the, oh my gosh, am I failing? Or it's, not necessarily thinking it's the end of the world, but am I a failure as an expat if I suddenly feel homesick? It's also recognizing it's part of the process and have people you can talk with, whether they're local where you are, or, if it's people you want to chat with people at home or other friends, or even, that wasn't my case, but I know people who needed to see a therapist for maybe just a couple months or something because they were adjusting, and you're taking care of yourself. So if you need that, explore the opportunities you have. There are even usually some low-cost options or anything. So it's like making sure you take care of yourself. And if you suddenly get homesick, you're not being a failure. You're being human.
Completely, yeah. And it's very brave the people, or very, courageous of the people who did go and seek therapy to get over it, because it's something which we don't do enough of, probably, is acknowledge that there is professional help you can get to help work through it, if you're in a situation, rather than just sit in silence. So yeah, it's definitely something that you'd encourage someone to do if they can't find another option, or can't find it. Then do speak to a professional, because that's what they are. They are professionals for a reason. So yeah, that's definitely worth, if you are struggling, to reach out or get professional help, because you might realise that everyone does go through it, as you were saying. I found it really tough, especially in Sweden when it was dark and cold, and that was far from everyone. That was the very low point, which is the birth of the podcast. So that's quite, I threw myself into this and threw myself into other stuff, which was my kind of way of getting out of it. But also I have a girlfriend who's got a degree in psychology, so she helped quite a lot as well.
Oh, so now I see when you're with her. I'm just teasing. But I also love that you mentioned the podcast, because sometimes it's also remembering, because we can get into the tunnel vision of like, I want to experience all the things, all the new things, and socialize and everything, and also do whatever it's, for work or studies or anything. But sometimes just going back to something on your own that you love doing. For you decided to start the podcast, even if obviously, you brought other people on, but there's always, that time when you need to brainstorm and do stuff even on your own. But have this kind of hobby or creative outlet, even if it turns into something else at some point, it's so what does bring you joy, and maybe you want to just go for walks more often. Maybe you just want to read more, even if it's carving 1 hour or even 40 minutes here and there. And that can also gives you build more familiarity into and balance out all the new experiences, because even if you're super excited about new experiences, kind of creating like familiarity can also help you balance out and be able to feel better.
Completely, yeah. It's I think having a balance, as you mentioned, yeah, it's do go be brave, do go explore, but also have a safe space, which is either you're, being creative by yourself, as you said, or just maybe for you, speaking with the online community, which is your kind of your nucleus, perhaps, which is the kind of the constant which you've always had, and or you've got a favorite TV show from home you listen to or watch, or you've got some music you like, or you've got an artist you keep up to date with the music and things like that, or like a YouTube channel or something, which I spend a lot of time watching YouTube, and a lot of time watching the UK political system kind of fail, which was quite interesting to watch from afar.
I've watched some stuff going down in France too, so yeah. I know they're.
And then interesting. Did you have much kind of reverse culture shock? So when you kind of look back at France now with a lens of you've lived somewhere else, either the UK or America, do you go and see actually that doesn't? I thought that was really good at home, or I thought that was really bad. Actually, it's the opposite. Have you kind of got that empathy for your country?
That depends for what. There are some places where I'm just like, you could really do better. And at the same time, for me, one of the biggest experiences or is kind of stuff we can take for granted in our home countries because we've been in them for like 20, 30 years. And they're like, oh, crap, I really took that for granted. And I thought it was the same everywhere, and it's not. And one of the things for me was, and again, there's issues in France as well, just like everywhere else, but like the lack of Puritanism in France was really great. Even I spent 8 years of my life in Catholics middle and high school. We were a bunch of hippies by evangelical standards. And it's like there's some of the stuff that like the ease of relationship between different genders in France. And again, there's a lot of sexism and other issues in France, but overall it didn't feel like this separation of genders as well in France. And like you could talk to other genders and it was totally fine. There was not that like a Puritan crap going on. And and sometimes I was, especially I would say generally in the US, but I especially experienced that in Texas when I was like, whoa, can we just chill for a second? We're human beings having conversations. Stop just putting all of those weird stuff on top of that. Please, just stop.
Yeah. It's funny because, we're social beings and social beings just like having friends and stuff. And it's funny because a lot of my friends from home are mainly women because just over time their relationships have kind of lasted longer. So some of my best friends from when I was 4 would just be women because we have more in common. We like some TV shows and we're friends, right? So it doesn't. Then there's nothing
which
more.
Which is good.
Yeah.
It's normal.
That's just life, right? But then I speak to like all a lot of my friends who have the boys and stuff, which is quite an interesting concept. And I think France has always been like pretty good for that. It's always Sweden as well. It was quite good for mixing, but I guess it's also because the equality is much higher there in terms of like if you look at universities and subjects taken, the mix of men to women for each subject was a lot more even, albeit there's still a gap, but the gap was a lot closer. So it meant that you had in the workplace, it wasn't just white middle-aged men. It was a mix of different people from different backgrounds. So you became normal to see everyone mixing everywhere, as opposed to just in certain situations, which is maybe what an issue with the times. It's just a bit more in the past as opposed to a lot of progressive places, but that's quite a shame.
Yeah, and I definitely lean on the progressive side of things. So it's true that was one of the things that for me, and I think it's changing in the States. And I mean, I see most of my close friends are also, on the progressive side of things and everything. So they've also experienced that even without being from Europe, that it's true that there's stuff that I took for granted. And I was just like this progressive in mixings of backgrounds, genders, ages, whatever. I had a bunch of guy friends even now, and it's normal,
Yeah, of course it's normal. It's sort of friends. Then you have to have a gender assigned to your friend, right? But how have you found the political thing? Because obviously America is quite well known for its political systems, and especially now with the election coming up and stuff. How have you found that as a French person and the French, not to draw a broad brush, are quite rebellious or revolutionary? You wouldn't.
Yeah, we
you
are.
Wouldn't, how has it been from what you expect the political system to be like in France to what you're experiencing now?
I don't, up to this day, I don't understand how you can consider having election, which was supposed to be, universal suffrage or whatever, but indirect. I'm just like, either you elect your people directly or you're not. Having the grand electors or whatever in the middle still baffles me. It baffled me before I moved to the States, so it's not gone better. It's, I think one thing for me that is profoundly interesting is that often I found, and again, it's very broad generalization here, so there's obviously a lot more nuance to that, but many times I find in the US people want to consider that voting, you have to be completely enthused with the candidate, while in France we really have much, and I think it's probably more European, technically speaking, where I think that in France and other places in Europe, we're kind of looking at, elections as in, okay, it's not a taxi, it's not going to take me to my perfect destination, it's freaking public transportation, maybe because we're European, it's going to get me as close as possible to my dream destination. Sometimes you're going to have to walk for miles. Sometimes you're lucky and you only get to walk a couple blocks, but I think having this approach to election, we're just like, okay, I'm not expecting to be super enthused about the candidate I'm voting for, but I'm trying to get the least bad option, is something that for me is not as common in the US, where I feel like a lot of people, again, very general, so there are obviously a lot of people who don't think like that, but I have witnessed that tendency of being like, oh, my candidate, if I vote, has to, be so close to perfection or something. Well, me coming from France, okay, what's the least shitty option?
What's the lesser of two evils, or three or four, or having multiple parties and choices is quite useful as well, I think, which is, anyway, I think one way to end the podcast. Do you want to share more? I think you mentioned before about your kind of business in terms of the online work you're involved in, and if you want to share where people can find you.
Oh, sure thing. So yes, I mentioned I consider myself a soul alchemist and an intuitive reader now. So I do work with a wide range of different people, whether they're seeking me, for more life guidance or more business oriented, because I've also supported a lot of entrepreneurs who needed clarity and inspiration through tarot and other intuitive practice for their current professional season. And you can find me on my website. I am also active on LinkedIn, on Instagram, and on YouTube.
Wonderful. I'll put links in the show notes for those for you, so people can find you.
I need to send you my updated ones.
Yes, please do. Wonderful. And as always, thank you, Natasha, for spending your time with me. I appreciate it. It's daytime for you, but evening for me. And I'm really enjoyed the conversation. It's very interesting. It's very interesting to understand a bit more your experiences of different countries in terms of the kind of either side of the Atlantic and how they're similar but also quite different. And I guess the strengths of your online community, even though it started so early in the online journey, is really inspiring to see how you can be so far from each other and still have such a great connection, to the point where you've got a husband out there, also a friend which got you a PhD. So, it's really helped you a lot. It feels that you're
half of our wedding guests were from that community. We had a very small wedding. Half of the people were there, and there are two people I consider like a hurt brother and a hurt sister. The first time I met them in person were 3 days before getting married. My hurt brother from that community walked me down the aisle, and my hurt sister was my maid of honor.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Did you have a themed wedding, or was it traditional?
We didn't go to Star Wars, but at the very last minute, my hurt brother, because it was like, do I play the Imperial March? And I was like, oh, let's do this. And it was just on his phone. Most people didn't hear it, but we got a kick out of it. So
that's so beautiful. Well, what a great way to end the podcast. And as always, you have enjoyed it, you have found something interesting and insightful, please do let us know in the comments. Please do subscribe to the podcast. Mainly, you want to hear more about it and you want to get in touch. Obviously, we're active on all socials. As always, we'll see you next time for the Expat Pod.